what's the difference between advertising and marketing? Because they would always talk about that, and between marketing and sales, and between public relations and recruitment. It was, what's the same? What works in all of those places? And there were only 7 things that all of them were using to make a profit.
Hello and welcome to the Perpetual Traffic podcast. This is the podcast where we talk about all things marketing to scale and grow your business and ultimately achieve your vision as an organization. And alongside my awesome co-host today, Lauren E. Petrullo. Say hello, Lauren.
Hello.
We have got a guest here that we're pretty darn excited about. And Lauren advised me not to shame all you Gen Zers for not knowing who he is, but you have probably referenced the principles that we're going to be talking about here today, and maybe didn't even realize where they came from because you probably read about them in, I don't know, an Alex Hormozi book, which he does give this guy credit for, obviously, but just let me rattle off a few things here. If you're not familiar with our guest here today, Warren Buffett said his book, Influence, is one of the best business books of all time. That's pretty good. Alex Hormozi said a must read for entrepreneurship, sales, and marketing. Guy Kawasaki. Dr. Cialdini is the godfather of influence. The book is the guiding light of how I conduct business and my life. Russell Brunson, Rory Sutherland, so many other people, including myself. I'm not going to put myself in that category. Glow about his first book and obviously his second book, Persuasion. Today on Perpetual Traffic, we are so excited to have Dr. Robert Cialdini. I am hoping I am pronouncing it correctly, through my Italian-laced co-host says I am not pronouncing it correctly, but welcome to Perpetual Traffic.
Well, thank you, Ralph, and hello, Lauren. I'm glad we have the chance to interact today.
So there was a story that I read that, and I've got a baseball player in my family that, because of a malfunction in a pen, your career might have taken a different turn, and we might not have gotten influence and persuasion. Maybe share that story with our audience here.
Of course, I was a good high school baseball player, and good enough to get a scout to be willing to sign me to a minor league contract. And he came to my last game with a contract, and he had talked to my parents, and I wanted to be Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays. I was a center fielder. I wanted to play baseball, and they said okay, and he was going to sign me to a contract for a very low level team in the minor leagues. That's how it always works. You start out there, and his pen didn't work, and so he said, "Well, I got one in my car." So we were walking to his car, and on the way, he said, Are you any good in school? I said, yeah, I am. He said, are you good enough to get into college? Yes. Good enough to graduate from college? Yes. Do you like school? I said, I love it. I love the research part of it mostly. And he took the contract out of my hand and he said, go to school, kid. Chances are you're not going to make the majors, but you've already told me the chances are very good that you're going to complete the goal of becoming a college graduate and going on from there. Do that, because it was something he knew that I was good at and loved at the same time. Whereas I loved baseball, but I probably wasn't going to be a major league baseball player. In fact, the way these things work, you're in the minors for 3 years, 4 years before you finally drop out, and in the last city that you're in, you settle, and maybe by that time I'm married, maybe I have a child. I don't get to go to college. And so I become the assistant manager of the Grand Forks, North Dakota Pizza Hut.
Right.
And we're not here together.
No.
We're not here. That's serendipity. That the pen didn't work. I mean, we have to recognize how important chance is in our lives. And what he told me, this scout, was something I always tell my students now. Look, we all have dreams, right? But you're probably not worth your salt if you don't have more than one dream, right? Choose the one you're best at. Choose the one you're most likely to succeed at. That's the recipe for professional
Yeah,
success. Yeah.
no, that's tremendous. Thank God for that pen that did not work. And it was a short walk, and it was just a few questions. But yeah, it's
Right.
I've come to that realization because my oldest is a baseball player, and he's in Division 3, and he's like, he's never going to make it. Like, he's got like
Yeah.
the
Great.
greatest kids like in his league make it to AA, or maybe at that point
Yeah.
none have ever made it to the majors. So, but he's got the passion for it, but he has more of a passion for business. So he's getting his MBA. So I feel like I'm pushing him in the right direction. It wasn't
Perfect.
exactly a broken pen that
Yeah.
did it, but the point is,
Right.
is here we are today, and we've got a lot to discuss. Um, so before we get into a lot of the things I know Lauren wants to ask here, I just want to sort of take a step back. And for those of you who are listening who maybe are not familiar with Dr. Cialdini's work, influence is obviously, like, between influence and persuasion, uh, over 10 million copies have been sold. Obviously, Warren Buffett calls it one of the best business books of all time. For those of you who are not familiar with it, Dr. Cialdini, if you could just explain the 7 laws or the 7 principles of persuasion. I think of them as laws, but really
Yeah.
principles of persuasion that or influence from the book itself, and then we can sort of base our conversation on
Yeah.
those and go dig deeper.
Well, let me tell you how I got to those 7. I started out being a university researcher studying persuasion in my laboratory with college students as my subjects, and I realized that wasn't really tapping into the evidence of what were the most powerful drivers of change, uh, of opinion, of behavior, of belief, and so on. In my laboratory, it was outside in the world where people's lives, financial success depends on it. The people who use the influence process to move people in their direction. So I started infiltrating incognito. I was a spy of sorts. Various influence training programs, marketers, salespeople, advertisers, fundraisers, recruiters, and so on, to find what were they saying that move people in their direction across this whole range. And the interesting thing was, well, what's the difference between advertising and marketing? Because they would always talk about that, and between marketing and sales, and between public relations and recruitment. It was, what's the same? What works in all of those
Yeah.
places? And there were only 7 things that all of them were using to make a profit from the influence process. So here they are. The first is reciprocation, the idea that people feel obligated to give back to those who have given to them. We say yes to those we owe. So the implication is we have to give first, give benefits, give advantages, give information before the sale, not after, before the sale. Not as a thank you, but as a way to make people feel grateful to what we have given to them. There was a study done in McDonald's for 1 week. All the families that came in the kids got a balloon. Half of them got a balloon as they left as a nice thank you for patronizing McDonald's. This is what we always do. The other half got a balloon as they entered. Their parents bought 25% more food because they owed McDonald's for their kid. If you do something for my kid, you do something for me. So the point is, go first. Go first. Okay, next principle is one nobody will be surprised at. It's liking. People prefer to say yes to those they like, those people who they approve of and who approve of them. There's a study of 6,700 online commercial websites They looked at conversions, right? What things could you put in and take out in A/B tests that produce the most transition from visitor to customer? And the liking principle showed up there. Well, how do you get liking online? Those people don't know you. You've never met them. There's no history with them. How do you? If you put a welcoming statement on the landing page of your site, you get significantly more conversions before they ever see one offer of a product or a service, before they know anything about you. You welcome them the way you would welcome somebody to your home, that you approve of them. That everybody can do that. We do that on our site now, right? And we see the effect. Okay, so that's the liking principle. Next principle is authority. People, when they're uncertain of what to do in a situation, don't look inside themselves for evidence. They look outside. And one place they look is authorities, true experts on a particular topic. So if you want to if you want to increase the people's perceptions of your own authority and credibility in a situation, when you give them a budget or an outline for the cost that it will require for you to do a project for them, never make it a round number. So let's say it's $25,000, 104, right? $25,104. You usually wipe out the 104. It's a mistake. If you leave the 104, you get more people to buy because they see you as being honest and knowledgeable about the costs, right? So that's one thing that you can do. And also, the other is bring in the authority voices of experts who have given testimonials to you or have voiced support for the kind of thing that you're doing, and put them first so that their authority aura imbues everything that you say before you say it. Why would you bury that information where the first half of your message doesn't have the authority support that is warranted, that it deserves? Put it first and make it multiple authorities. Research shows that multiple authorities outdistance the effect of a single authority testimonial. Some advertising marketing firms say just put your best testimonial there. No, because they think that the subsequent ones will dilute it. No, subsequent ones reinforce it. And the data show you get more conversions with multiple authorities at the top than a single one. Next principle is social proof. The idea that, again, when people are uncertain, and those are the only people we're interested in, right? The people who are certain are either going to buy us or they're never going to buy us. The people who are uncertain, well, they don't look out inside themselves for answers. They look outside. One place is authorities, the other is to their peers. What have the people around them like them doing, right? What are they doing? And if you can show evidence of especially a trend in your direction, right, of more purchases, more market share, whatever, you can honestly move people in your direction just by citing what's true, especially, and it has to do with something that maybe you have multiple products, and one of them, there are other products that you have, but one of them is your most popular. Just mention that is the most popular of our other, or our upgrades, let's say, right? And that's enough to cause people to want to buy it, whereas before they weren't paying attention to it. Label it honestly. It's ethical. you're most popular, and it wins the day. Another principle is one that people will be familiar with: scarcity.
Sure.
Right? People want more of those things they can have less of. So if you have something that's unique, uncommon, rare, bring that to consciousness early in your presentation, so people, when they know that they can only get this from you, they want it more. Right? Sometimes there isn't any one thing, but I bet every one of your listeners has a combination of things, a suite of features that none of their rivals can provide. That's what you elevate to consciousness. The combination that only you can provide them. Right? So,
Yeah.
scarcity. Um, Another principle is commitment and consistency. People want to be consistent with what they have already said or done in a situation, right? So here's a great story from the city of Chicago. I don't know how many of your listeners are from Chicago.
I'm from the city of Chicago. I have a huge back tattoo of the
Oh,
flag, actually.
okay. Do you remember Gordon's restaurant? He
Yes.
retired. Yeah, great classic Chicago restaurant. He was having a problem that many restaurateurs have: no shows. People who would call, book a table, and then they wouldn't appear, and they didn't call to cancel. So he listened to what his receptionist said, and she said, would say to people after they made a reservation, "Thank you for calling Gordon's. Please call if you have to change or cancel your reservation." I heard that a million times. Right? He asked her to change two words, not "please call," but "will you please call?" And then he asked her to pause. What would you say inside the pause? Most people said, "Yes, of course, sure."
Ah,
And they made a public commitment to coming. And no
Whoa.
shows unannounced, that is, unannounced no shows dropped by 64% that
wow.
day and never went back up. So asking people, what can you give me? What are the things you're looking for, and so on, and then you show how what you have fits with what they've put on the table. We did a consultation once with a company, and they were having a very difficult time uh, getting people to move away from their current uh, uh, vendor, right, to the other, to my client. And I said, "What do you say to them?" And he said, "Well, I say, why did you choose? Can you tell us why you chose this person instead of mine?" That's getting them to make a public commitment to your opponent, getting them to announce publicly and to themselves, reinforce to themselves why they think your rival is better. So I said, try this. Say, if there was one thing you could improve in your experience with the company you're working with, what would it be? And now they're making a public commitment to a deficit, a weakness in their opponent's case. And now the rival, my client, gets to say, we can help with that. And it's the only thing that ever changed. Right? Okay, one other thing: you get people to say yes to something that by asking the right question that makes a commitment to them. Right? I have a friend, a colleague, who is head of a Boy Scout troop. He has two boys who are boys, and they sell popcorn outside of supermarkets, saying, as people leave. And he said, we're having a terrible time. Only about 15% of the people will buy our popcorn. And I can see why. They were if they wanted popcorn, they'd have got it in the supermarket.
Right.
And
Mm.
and they just spent all their budget, right? They don't want. So again, I said, what do you say? When they come out, we say, would you like to buy some popcorn? It would help support the Boy Scouts. All right. I said, try this. Oh, Lauren is exactly right. If you say first, do you do you like the Boy Scouts? Everybody says yes. Oh, well, would you like to buy some popcorn to support them? Now you go from 15% to 55%. And the best thing is, people who have just committed themselves to wanting to support the Boy Scout but don't want popcorn say, I don't want your popcorn, but here's $5 for the
Yeah.
Boy Scouts. You're not even drawing down your stores of popcorn. And you're all right. So that's the commitment and consistency principle. And then the new one is the principle of unity. People want to say yes to those people they share an identity with, share a category that they feel is a we-ness, where you would use the term we for these people. And there was a study done at a university, for example. Researchers took a young woman dressed the way a college student would, about college student age, to stand in front of a table asking for donations to the United Way. And she was getting some uh, donations because she was similar to them. That influences liking, right? But if she added to her her pitch to say, instead of just would you give a contribution to the United Way, if she said, I'm a student here too, like you, would you? She got a 450% increase in
Mm.
donations. People want to say yes to those who are of them, who are one of them. And if we can arrange for people to see those commonalities, that between us and them, they will be much more compliant with our requests. So those are the principles of influence.
Man, I took so many notes, Rob. I was like, okay, I'm immediately changing my sales script. We're updating our website to have a welcome message. And I was just thinking how I 100% hired my garage door company because the number it was not a round number. I was like, oh, they must have really factored in the cost to
Right.
give me the best deal. I
Yeah.
got Cialdini.
Well, good. We just started a company called the Cialdini Institute, where we teach ethical influence. And the other thing we do is what we call small bigs, the smallest changes you can make that produce the
Mm.
biggest influence. And those are two of them. You have a welcoming message on your website. You have a non-round number. You have an exact number rather than a round. Those cost nothing, and they produce big effects. So small bigs, we live in the most information overloaded, stimulus saturated environment that's ever existed. We need our shortcuts, and that's what small bigs provide us. Small changes don't require a lot of effort, cost, time, and still produce effects. So we're really zooming in on those.
Because I think there's so much on social right now. Just think about all the networks that we belong to. Just as humans, it's almost overwhelming. Like how many places people can get in touch with an individual person, and then all those channels obviously have advertising, sales messages. It's something that when I came through as a sales guy in the pharmaceutical and the like the biolab industry, is always be ethical in your persuasion. It was almost like it was exactly what you're talking about. Ethical persuasion. Tell them about the side effects. Tell them about, hey, this happens. This is not for this type of individual. However, this is going to be the benefit. Or when I was rereading your book or re-listening to your book last week, I'm like, there it is. Like, and it worked. It was so amazing because it's ethical persuasion. It's not something that I'm manipulating. I'm just actually
Right.
being upfront and being honest, and it feels good because
And you're taking a
yeah,
lemon and making lemonade out of it. Remember the Avis slogan and
yeah,
campaign from back in the 80s? Avis, we're number
yeah.
two,
Wait,
but
what?
we try harder.
Wow.
700% increase in market share during that campaign. Now, how about this? Lauren, you probably have heard this one. L'Oreal Cosmetics. L'Oreal, we're expensive, but you're worth it. 300% increase in market share during the, because people see, oh, these people are being straight with us. They're honest. So what's the next thing they say? Now, the next thing they say after they mention a weakness is the strength. And now you believe the strength differently than if you haven't established yourself as a credible source of information by being honest about a weakness that you can overcome. Everybody who's listening now should be thinking, what's a weakness that my rivals describe for us, right? Or that we have that we can overcome. We often bury it, right? What Ralph just said about pharmaceutical sales is exactly right. You mention it and then you show how you can overwhelm that, or you can undercut its relevance because of what else you do, right? Warren Buffett does this at the beginning of every one of his letters to shareholders. He mentions something that went wrong on the first or second page. And then he says, that will never happen again because we have figured out how to eliminate that. And I get his shareholders report. I've been getting it for 25 years. And then he says, and here's what went right this year. And I process that information more deeply and I believe it more fully because he once again has established his honesty and credibility and trustworthiness by telling me that it's not all peaches, right, and cream. We made a mistake, but then he says it'll never happen again because we've changed things. Okay, you're not susceptible to that weakness anymore. But what I've learned is that you're an honest broker of information about yourself, and I'm going to believe the next thing you say differently.
Now, the question is did he read your book and then start doing that? I'm not quite sure.
I don't know. But I'll tell you now Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger are Charlie's passed now, but the most remarkable financial investors of our time. A single share of Berkshire Hathaway is going for $600,000.
Yeah.
And there's never been anything like it, in our markets, right? $600,000. How could it be? Well, they read psychology books. They know that the market is not made up of econometric models. It's made up of people. So they read psychology. My book is one of them, but they read psychology books and they understand the human tendencies and drivers of their market.
Yeah, there was even an example in your book where you talked about like that. I forget which year it was 2018 or 2019. Like he had an amazing year. He didn't make any mistakes. But then he went back and he talked about something that happened like 2 or 3 years prior to that. Wasn't that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He exactly right. It was he bought
oh, what was it? He lost like
Duncan Shoes
the
or
shoe
some company like
yeah.
that, and it was a
Right.
mistake. And he brings it up in the year where he did nothing wrong, just to remind people.
Like, this is the lesson we learned.
Hey, I'm honest enough to tell you that I sometimes make mistakes. That turns lemons into lemonade.
At what point do you go too far on that? So like people will be listening. It's like, oh, well, I'm just going to tell them like all our faults. Whoa, wait a second.
Right.
That's not what we're talking about here. Like, where's that line?
No, you're exactly right. Good insight. You don't sit down with somebody and say, before we begin, let me tell you all the things that are wrong with me, my company, my products, and my services.
Not exactly a great sales pitch. Right.
No.
I'm okay if my competitors do that all day long. If you are listening and you're a competitor in Mongoose Media, start your script this
listening,
way.
it's fine to do
Misunderstand what Cialdini is saying.
Take what he said. Just stop the
you mention a weakness that you can then say, however, or but, or nonetheless, and then wipe out the weakness. You've only gained a perception of credibility because the weakness isn't there anymore.
I will admit that for us, at least at Mongoose Media, what we have like started like honoring and truth wise, at least because we're working with brands for at least a year. Like for us, less than 2 years is a short term commitment. So, what we found really helpful in our conversations has been straight up saying the first 3 to 6 months will be the worst of this working relationship because of how much we have to discover about your brand and understand your funnel as if we're an in house full time employee. And like you're saying this, I'm like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense why it's allowed us to have stronger conversations by admitting the hardest part of our working relationship, because that's when most people evaluate agencies anyways. They want fast, immediate results.
Right. But you've already captured the essence of it in that it's not just saying, oh, this is a problem. You're saying, so that we can understand your brand and be your ally in ways that other companies can't who don't understand your brand to the same degree. Right? We will put in the time and effort, and unfortunately, that'll be the least effective we'll be during. But the consequence will, again, the word however. I have a colleague who's a psycholinguist. She studies the psychology of language. And she says, do you know what the word but signifies to the recipient? Take what I just said and put it away. Put it, ash can it, right? Right?
Doesn't count.
And now that's why you want your weakness before the word but, not after. Why you want your strengths after the word but, not to do what we typically do and do all our positivity first, and then we say, but this is a problem, or we bury it and don't say it at all. There's a wall of doubt between us and our customers, our prospects. They don't know whether to believe those positive things until we've established ourselves as credible sources of information. Well, you do that by mentioning a weakness, but it has to be a weakness you can then wipe out. And then all that's happened is that you have honestly informed people about your honesty, and they want to do business with you. And I can't emphasize more than what you the wisdom of what you're saying, Lauren, is that ethical influence is the basis for long-term clients. You can't fool them. You should never try to deceive or exaggerate or counterfeit the information that you give to them, because that's going to come to the surface at some point, and they will never want to do business with you again if they see you as a cheater.
And you also have to mention something that's known, like it's widely known. You use Domino's as an example in the book, and like in the industry space and our agency space, companies go from agency to agency to agency to agency. So it's like persuading them to a certain degree with, hey, this is going to take 60 to 90 days because this is the reason why, because we're going to heavily invest or do whatever it is that you can do in order to sort of, set the stage.
Or our setup costs are a little more expensive than our rivals, but that's because they will overperform our rivals' product. I mean, that's so compelling. I'm telling you, every time I read what Buffett does, I say, wow, these guys are being straight with me. What's the next thing they say? And I've opened myself up. The wall has come down. Any doubt comes down. Yeah.
It makes so much. It's counterintuitive because everyone just wants to talk about how great they are. And I mean,
well, Instagram leads into that. Like a lot of these social channels want you to live a life where you're just comparing yourself. And when you're showing a life of like, I have so much influence and I'm such an influential person, and you're not being honest about it, like that has been systematically curated as success for a lot of people. And like, I know that you coined social proof, like the aspects of it, like lean into it favoring deceit.
Yeah. And have you ever been deceived into buying or engaging with getting services from somebody who cheats? It gives you. Would you ever do business with that person again? Would you ever? I mean, the long-term efficiencies of a relationship are just curtailed now. They just don't exist anymore because you've cut off any motivation to continue to work with those folks. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been nuclearized. There's one relationship I'm thinking about, like anything that involves that vendor whatsoever, like anything that touches it, like I feel that it's been contaminated.
Exactly.
Because I felt so bad in that relationship. I was like,
Yeah.
no.
The other part to this, I think that's super important is reviews. So we talk to a lot of e-commerce companies and we've had so many folks on here for post-purchase survey, how to get user-generated content, how to do it the right way, all these other sorts of things. Obviously with user-generated content, which is one of the big things that, you know, us as agencies certainly do is, it is going to be all high level, but this is like changing my viewpoint of it. We just hired a brand new sort of creative team. I'm like, well, will you ever really talk about like maybe like a slight reason why, like, hey, this is a little bit more expensive, or whatever it happens to be. But you talk about reviews and everyone uses reviews now. And you say negative reviews. I think like the incidence of negative reviews was another one of these amazing stats of how it actually persuaded and how it actually helped business. Can you talk about that?
If you had a negative review, that actually increased conversions, provided it was a minority. I mean, you don't because it's these people are willing to show us the negative, not just they're being. This is an honest depiction of the star ratings. So there's an interesting study that showed the star rating that most leads to conversions is not 5 stars. It's an average of between 4.3 and 4.7.
That's how many dentists approve my toothpaste.
Yeah, because nobody gets all 5 stars. That's somebody's cooking the books.
Dentists surveyed,
right?
Once again, that's like the same thing, really.
Yeah, that's right. So, but and if you do, let's just say this: if you do get a negative review, and it's something that you can change, you should respond to it by saying, thank you for pointing this out. We've, just like Buffett says, we're changing that. That increases credibility so much. But if it's something that this person just didn't like what it is that you offered, right? Here's what you say in response. We're sorry that was your experience, Jim. We're so glad that the vast majority of our reviewers didn't experience that. Look, and then what you do is you move them from the negative review to the social proof of the positive reviews you've had. You shift their attention away from that person, but the vast majority, and then they look at, it's 4.6. This guy is the outlier. This is the guy we don't want to believe, right? You've honestly shifted them to something that you do have.
Right.
Social proof.
Yeah. It's like the
don't let it fester there. Don't let it infect.
Respond to it.
Yeah.
Reply to it.
Respond to it and either say, we're going to correct that, thank you. Or, we're sorry that's the case, but thank goodness the great majority of have never had that experience.
Right. Now, if you're getting mostly 2 and 1 stars, like you have a whole different problem.
Then you need to change some things.
You've got an issue there.
Then it's not a persuasion issue. Then it's a retrofit
issue.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things you mentioned in the book is the towel thing that everybody sees in the hotels. It's sort of the same kind of thing. Like we're going across principles here a bit, but I mean, I think it's good to sort of get a cross section because our time is limited.
Yeah.
Just can you explain how that once again, like we're talking about tiny nuances in
small big things,
Small
tiny
base.
hinges that swing the big
Right.
door for huge conversion or sales increases here, but it's
Yeah.
how you use language, and that's one of the best things about all the stuff that you do. So maybe talk about
Yeah.
the towel in the hotel example.
So we did a study of the signs that exist in hotel rooms that we've all been in that say, please reuse your towels and linens, so that will help
Yep.
the environment. And we did a study where that was what the sign said. That was the control group, what it always says. All right. We did another sign that said the great majority of the people in our hotel do reuse their towels at least once during their stay. Right. And that was true. And it went from 36% of people reusing their towels to 39%. Right? Now, if we made one small change, the great majority of people who've stayed in your room, just like you, room 214, not room 213, that's the people across the hall. The people like you, now 45%. You go, so here's the implication. When you're speaking to an audience, you should segment them so that you can say the great majority of people in your district, in your region, in your city, in your community, do that research and be able to show it. That's the one that resonates the most.
Unity, the principle of
And tying
unity
it back.
Now
being
it's the principle of
incorporated.
unity at
Yeah,
work.
they all sort of overlap, I
So,
found.
yeah, you're combining social proof and unity.
Yeah.
Wow. Now you get real
That's where the
leverage.
real power is. No, that's tremendous.
Well, obviously, Ralph, I've told you about the importance of bringing influence to shareholders in the marketing space that don't believe in radical changes of new numbers. We've been talking about marketing performance indicators and how so many are focused on in-app metrics that aren't leading to true profitability at scale. And there's definitely a challenge for a lot of people to persuade brand owners and marketers to jump on this new wave of thinking that's more honest for both the business owner and the marketer's performance. It's way easy and unethical at times, to take all the credit because of the way your Facebook ad is performed and able to take the credit. So it's just this blurry line. And if there were words of advice you could give to those brands that are relying on simple return on ad spend and the immediacy, or those marketers that are, I'm not going to do it because it's just harder. What would you say to help influence a better approach to success?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're saying that there are certain gold standard metrics that have always been effective, and now there's some new ones that are much more dicey in terms of how the extent to which they really show profitability or lead to profitability. I would say, yeah, use the ones that have always been working well, because you have confidence in them. This is what the 7 principles are. There are things that, I mean, scarcity, authority, liking, social proof. Those have existed for eons in human behavior, and so hooking to them makes great sense because they're the ones that best reflect the human condition. And I think that's the proven metrics that in the past have always worked, is kind of what I did with the principles of influence, the ones that have always moved. My book Influence, some people have called it the the Bible of online marketing. It was written before there was online marketing, right? So they've asked me, how did you see ahead? How did you look forward and see this new platform that was going to, your principles were going to be effective in? I said, I didn't look ahead. I looked inside us. What are the things that have always driven us to move in ways reliably, have always done that? Those are the ones that are probably going to still move us, no matter what platform you're on, right? We've evolved into those things because they work. And um, right. There's an old Chinese saying, and I want to get this right. Um, and I'm bugling on it now, but it essentially is, um, the years know what the days can't say. The years know what the days can't say, because you've got history, you've got precedent, you've got mountains of evidence over the years that tell you where to go. And the newest things may seem flashy and interesting, but they may not be able to really say what's effective.
Sorry, I'm like this is exactly what I like want to scream at a lot of individuals because they get so caught up in shiny and new, and a lot of the numbers that they're leaning in are relatively new and it's easy, but it's not the standard that has
Yeah,
pre-existed
yeah,
this shiny object. I'm like, oh my gosh, preach.
Well, I mean, for people to say, geez, how did you predict so much of what we're doing right now online? All we've done is taken the offline world into the online world, and humans haven't changed.
we haven't
No,
evolved. We
they're
haven't
still
evolved over the last 30
no.
years to different drivers of consent.
Same thing, you know.
No, those are still
Buffett and
in
Munger
there.
know this.
So if
That
you can
you know,
drill them into your technology, then you're going to be. That's, for
yeah,
example, put a welcoming statement on your landing page. It's new
it's
technology,
crazy.
right? But it's the
So,
human connection. Build that in.
like, think about it this way: people, I've had a welcome doormat on my house for the last like 30 years. Well, that's what we do when people come to our house for the first. It's
Exactly.
it, but it's not anything. I mean, I'm not saying that anything that you're saying here is simplistic, but it is simple because it goes back to
Yeah.
human behavioral principles which have always existed.
Right.
And you're
Yeah, that's why the things that I looked for in all of those organizations that I infiltrated was, well, what's the same
yeah,
across all of them? What has produced significant profits unilaterally? It doesn't matter if it was one industry or another, or one kind of population or another, one kind of product versus a service. These are the ones that all work because they're built in to how we're socialized and how we
so
evolved.
cool. And that's one of the big differences in your books. And obviously, yeah, people are going to be like, oh my God, Burns and Petrullo, they're such Cialdini fanboy and fangirls. Well, there's a reason for that, is because tiny little nuances in language really do matter. But your research was done in the field. It wasn't done in a like you've got the doctor in front of your name and you could have stayed in the lab and and viewed
Right.
people.
No, we went into hotel
You took
rooms.
a busboy job to observe the
Yeah, I
waiter,
took a
you
busboy
know,
job to see what waiters did to get people to say
right?
yes to.
Like
Yeah,
that's getting in the field. Like that's in the field. That's not behind the the one way glass. Observing a group.
right,
Like you are actually doing it, which is makes the book that much more credible, and all the books so much more credible, and all your teaching so much more credible because it comes from that field research, and it's just it's patterns that you noticed, and the ones that we continue to use today. And if you're listening to this show saying, I think I need to revamp my marketing, you're probably right. It's the first time that you've read it. So
well, the great thing is that you only need to revamp it with small bigs.
small, yeah.
You're not gonna have to change your marketing DNA.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's the small hinges will swing the big door. So where can people find you? Obviously, we'll leave links in the show notes to obviously both of your books. Like, where's it? And I know you've got a new way in which people can interact with you. Obviously, you do a lot of speaking. Like, where's the best way for people to connect with you?
The best way is Cialdini.com, which brings you to this new startup I was telling you about, the Cialdini Institute, where we train people and organizations in effective ethical influence.
So there is that. If they wanted to connect with you personally, are you on any socials? Do you do much on the social side?
I mean, I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook and so on.
Yeah. Well, we'll direct folks to those resources there, and get the new. If you listen to or read Influence, I read it way back when. Ryan Dice obviously caught me onto it. That's when I was first, because he was like my first sort of mentor in this industry. And he's like, well, I learned all my stuff from this other guy. I really don't know all that much. But if you have read Influence, go back and you've revised it. When did you revise it?
2 years ago, we did and we added 150 pages.
So it's chunky now. Like it's fantastic.
And
that was a big.
Yeah.
or buy it,
But each section is a small.
It really is. It's a lesson unto itself, and listen to it over and over again. It's one of those books I listen to every single year. Like there's certain books, and this one, obviously, since the update. So definitely we'll leave links in the show notes for all of that. I can't tell you how excited and grateful we are for you coming on Perpetual Traffic here today and joining us for longer than expected. And,
I truly enjoyed it.
This was great. This was tremendous. So make sure that wherever you listen to podcasts, you subscribe and leave a rating, especially after this one. We're going to get a lot of 5 stars, but we're aiming for the 4.3 to the 4.7. I think we're like 4.9 right now. Yeah. So people think we're full of it. So
Wait, let me fact check this.
We used to read our bad reviews on air. Me and the previous host.
Wait,
I don't want to incentivize people to do that.
No,
still give it like, hey, if you didn't like this, then hey, give an honest review.
Give this Perpetual Traffic podcast a 5, because there's some people who are going to bring it down to 4.7, but not you. You don't want to be that person.
We might have to use that in a video, like right there. Like Dr. Robert Cialdini said, give Perpetual Traffic a 5. There you go. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on today. And obviously, subscribe, leave a rating. Like we said before, we'll leave all the links in the show notes. Definitely check out cialdini.com. And we'll leave links there so you can engage with the new set of, like a new suite of services that you folks offer that teach a lot of these principles. Of course, you can check us out over on our YouTube channel if you want to see this live. See me and Lauren just aghast that Dr. Cialdini is on Perpetual Traffic. You can see that over at perpetualtraffic.com/YouTube. And all resources and links are in the show notes at perpetualtraffic.com. So on behalf of my awesome co-host, Lauren Petrullo.
Ciao.
Until next show, see you.